Hey, what's up, guys? It's the Jawnz. I just want to bring some coverage from the other day from Nick Fuentes. He's bringing up some good points about Trump, some really good criticism of him in regards to the Epstein files and just how he is as sort of like a president in general. And then he makes allegations that the Conservative Party needs to be removed as well or changed completely. But anyway, let's sort of go through this.
The big news today is that the discharge petition, which was created by Ro Khanna, the Democrat, Thomas Massie, the Republican, has finally been brought to the floor of the U.S. House and was passed almost unanimously. This is the bill that will compel the DOJ to release all the Epstein files. Today it passed unanimously. Now it goes to the U.S. Senate, where it has already been agreed upon that it will pass unanimously there as well. And then quickly it will move to the White House, where President Trump says that he will sign it. So this is an unbelievable earthquake. Because again, as I said at the beginning of...
It's a real turnaround, right? Because like this thing's just been ridiculous. And Nick's going to explain this as well. But basically Trump, one of his key principles that he ran on was that he was going to release the Epstein files. He got into power and he fucked around. He said he was going to release them. He said he wasn't. And then there was this 45-day filibuster with the government. That was a new term to me. Basically, they just couldn't agree, and there was a few abstaining votes, and they couldn't form a majority. This is how I understand it. And basically, it was just like a stalemate until someone was going to either to vote, basically. But this is all changed. Now they've gone back on it. Now they say they are going to release them. It's just ridiculous beyond the point now. And when they do, whatever they do release, no one's going to believe that it's factually correct. We know that Trump's name was mentioned 1,000 times. That could just mean that he, a flight to there is a mention. So it's been too long now, and there's way too much distrust. So he needs to, I don't know what they need to do, but it's basically Nick's going to advocate for people to lean away from the Conservative Party and from Trump.
The show, and we'll work through some of the timeline. President Trump has been working tirelessly and spending enormous political capital basically since he took office to prevent exactly this from happening. Ever since January of this year, so 10 months ago, Trump has been fighting, and he's come up with every trick. He tried to distract the people. He tried to deceive the people. He tried to bury and cover up the Epstein files, tried to stall Congress and prevent them from considering it. He threw his weight around. He used intimidation, tried to bully Republicans, his supporters, and his political allies to stop talking about it. He did everything, pulled out every stop. And in the end, not only did it not work, but in the final week, it looks like there was this boiling over. And in the end, not only did the bill pass, but it passed unanimously in the House and the Senate. And go figure. Just a week ago, you had 4 Democrats, or was it 6 or 7 Democrats? 6 Democrats, I think it was, held up the entire U.S. Senate, shut down the government for over 40 days, over nothing. Think about it. 6 Democrats shut down the entire government, the longest shutdown in history, for 45 days. They were going to shut down air travel during Thanksgiving. They were going to prevent food stamps from going out to 40 million people. They furloughed much of the government. I knew many people in government that didn't get paid for a month. TSA wasn't getting paid. You had hour-long security lines in Texas at LaGuardia, New York, over nothing. And this week, every single member, they all got together. 2 weeks ago, they could barely come to an agreement to let the planes fly during Thanksgiving and Christmas. And now every single member, Republican and Democrat, House and Senate, has come together and agreed we want the Epstein files against the wishes of the president. This is a coup. This is a mutiny.
So this also goes to show that the members of Congress in the Senate and the House, they're losing faith in Trump as well. And I think the public, the people that voted for him, I mean, the MAGA movement, I think they're gonna support him till they die. But yeah, I think that it just goes to show that he's losing support.
Make no mistake about it. That's the significance of it. Trump lost on this one. And this is a story. This is from The Hill. It says, quote, the Senate agreed by unanimous consent on Tuesday to approve a House-passed bill that will require the Justice Department to release all unclassified records and documents related to convicted Senator Jeffrey Epstein, sending the bill to President Trump's desk for a signature. Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer on Tuesday received unanimous consent to approve the Epstein Files Transparency Act upon receipt of the legislation from the House, only hours after the lower chamber voted 427-1 to approve it. The Democratic leader received approval from all 99 of his colleagues to deem the bill passed as soon as the Senate receives the legislation from the House. Senate aides said they expected that formality to happen either tonight or tomorrow morning. Trump says he will sign the legislation after spending months discrediting it, a sign that the wave of public support for greater disclosure of what the DOJ collected from its investigations of Epstein had become too strong to oppose in Washington. Speaker Mike Johnson, who voted for the legislation earlier Tuesday, accused the Democrats of using it to score political points, and get this is the Speaker of the House, urged Senate Republicans to make changes to the bill to, quote, make sure we don't do permanent damage to the political system.
I mean, yeah, I think you already have. Yeah, like when a presidential candidate runs on, saying that he's going to be transparent in the government, make the government more transparent, and release these files, like what are we doing? Like all around the world, the public are just losing faith in their politicians. And I think that I don't know why more referendums aren't done. Just a vote online. You log in with an ID or something on a government website, and the public just votes on these matters. I don't understand why we are still appointing these members to represent us. We don't need those members anymore. We have the internet. Like, these systems were developed before the internet. So we don't really need all of this government. We just, local ones I can understand, little counties to look after the parks and obviously we need some form. We need the police, we need, the military, we need lots of things from the government. We do. But do they need to represent us anymore? We can have our own voice online. And they'll say, oh, we can't make sure that it's secure and whatever. That's just nonsense.
What did he mean by that? So the House of Representatives votes unanimously for the Epstein Transparency Act. It forces the Department of Justice to release all the remaining Epstein records and documents in their custody. And the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, says, well, we should consider some amendments, and we should restrict the scope of the disclosure. In other words, they want to keep some files hidden. Why? Mike Johnson says, quote, to make sure we don't do permanent damage to the political system. What would be permanently damaging to the political system about releasing all the files? See, they're giving the game away here. And what they're telling us is that at the highest levels, probably people on both sides are implicated in the disclosure.
Yeah.
that Jeffrey Epstein running a traffic.
So it's not just Trump that's implicated in these. Obviously, it's smaller members as well. Now the motive of Epstein, I think Nick goes through later in the video. I don't. He thinks that it was like sort of more of a blackmail ring. I think differently, but who knows? Regardless, whatever was going on there was bad, and the people that participated in that, like Prince Andrew and others, they need to be held accountable.
Blackmail ring, that's what it is. He worked with fashion and modeling agencies to recruit girls, in particular girls. He threw lavish parties using billionaire money, maybe from foreign governments, maybe from the Mega Group, a collection of pro-Israel billionaires. And with his lavish parties, his island, his New York City house, and the girls, he brought government officials, Hollywood celebrities, powerful businessmen to these parties, secretly recorded them using cameras and microphones to blackmail them. And then I believe, and it's my understanding, that then he sold the blackmail. He functioned as sort of an intelligence mercenary, working with CIA, working with Israeli military intelligence, working with MI6.
I don't know if this is. I think this just goes a little bit too far. I think that. I think it's a lot more simple than that. I think that when you're a multi-billionaire and you can purchase anything in the world, there's some things that are harder to purchase, right? And I think that Epstein was the facilitator for that. I think it's just as simple as that.
And it appeared to form some kind of triangle between the Labour Party in England, the Labour Party in Israel, and the Democratic Party in the United States, but also overlap with all the other political actors in those countries.
I think he may have a point here, because it is interesting that, like Prince Andrew went to the island, and Bill Clinton and Trump, like just lots of different powerful people from all around the world. But I think that, like, I don't know about Saudi people, if any, princes or anything went there, they probably don't need to. They probably just got that in their own country. But yeah, I don't know. I think that it wouldn't matter as long as you're a powerful, wealthy, and influential person. You're going to be invited.
And forming something like a intelligence mercenary outfit triangulating between these three countries, which is a very conspicuous triangle. And Mike Johnson says, we cannot release all the files pertaining to this situation because it might permanently damage the political system. Why? Because it might undermine its legitimacy and credibility. If we found out that the government was being controlled using blackmail and bribery, because it would undermine confidence in our government, in our democracy. If we learned that our civilian elected leaders were not answering to the will of the people, but were actually being controlled by foreign governments, intel agencies, that our tax money, that our government, our military, our regulations are actually under the control of shadowy forces that are engaged in trafficking and blackmail, working for God only knows who. Why would we want to maintain a political order based on that? That's sort of the whole point. We want this to destroy the political system. Were we not clear about that? That's the whole point. That's the whole point, by the way, of the Trump movement. The political system is not working.
And like, as you can see, we've listened to 9 minutes of him so far, and there's nothing bigoted and hateful that he's saying at all. He's telling the truth. What one point doesn't make a line. Lots of points make a line on the graph, and all of a sudden you have some data. And Nick's just pointing it out. And it's a real shame that earlier on in his career, he might have said some things that, would have gotten him a lot of views. But now he's sort of on the rails a little bit more and a lot more reasonable. But you can't, like, silencing these people just gives them more of a platform. Like, I don't know how many views this has got. It's 500,000 followers on Rumble. I have no idea if that's a lot or not, but there's a lot of people that feel this way.
Working for the people. The political system is not answerable or accountable to the people because the political system is corrupt. And at these bottlenecks, this is where intelligence, mercenaries, foreign governments, money is exercising undue influence in a way that is concealed from the public for an agenda that we don't know about and maybe we don't even understand. Our sovereignty, our freedom, our liberty, our independence has been stolen from us by this system. Why would we want to maintain this system? That's the goal. The system is corrupt. The system has to be destroyed. That's the whole point, is to undermine its credibility, undermine its legitimacy, so that it can be overthrown and replaced. And we're not calling for a violent revolution. We have elections in this country. That's what elections are for. We have a constitution. And if we have free speech, if we have our First Amendment, if we're able to access the public square on social media, then the will of the people should overpower the money. In this case, if we find out who was on the island, we're going to vote to replace everybody that was complicit in it.
Correct. Absolutely correct. And that's, I think, why it's not just Trump that was worried about these files getting released. There was a 45-day mutiny or coup that Nick calls it. That's not for no reason. There's something going on. There are names in the file that want to remain hidden. Trump is in the spotlight. He's always had lots of bad publicity. It's not really tarnishing his record. Whereas the other ones, like, Prince Andrew, for instance, it will, and it does.
And that might give you some hope that we can peacefully replace the political system. That's the whole point. Johnson says we can't give away the whole game because then it might undermine the political system. Why? Because you're all guilty? Is that it? Because it's all true? Because you're all guilty and you know that if we saw all the Epstein files, nobody would pay their taxes, nobody would vote, because why would you? What would be the point? You're paying parking tickets while they're being blackmailed for child rape? You're paying taxes, you're forking over 25% every year. 3 months out of the year, you're working for the government, and that money is being controlled by people that were on the island? Yeah, hopefully there would be a revolution the day after that. Hopefully the political order would collapse the next day. That's sort of the point.
See how he changes what he's saying? He knows he doesn't want to advocate for violence. He knows that that's unacceptable. He's using the correct language now to get his points across, which I think is very important because, like, I have similar views. Like, for instance, in self-defense, I have very strong views about self-defense and defending your own home and those sorts of things. I think that we should have capital punishment, all sorts of things, but also I believe in due process and following the law. But these politicians, same here in Australia, no one's holding them accountable. They're just doing what they want, flying on private jets for their personal holiday time. It's just, everybody's losing faith. And no one's really talking about a new system, because that's really what we need. We don't need all of these different levels of government and decision making. I think it can be done by the people. And you might say that, some people can't. If you can vote for an election, then you can vote on ideas. And at least then we do live in a democracy where the people's voice actually matters and the majority matters. And, say the majority of Australia votes yes on Greens. If it was the majority of Australians that voted yes on that, look, okay, I'll pay the higher power bill. All right, have it your way, and let's all pay the more power. And then in, 4 years or 2 years or whatever, it'll be up again for vote, and we can change our mind. You know, just a new system. We don't need these individuals. They just take the power just goes to their head, and yeah, it's just disgusting.
That were on the island? Yeah, hopefully there would be a revolution the day after that. Hopefully the political order would collapse the next day. That's sort of the point. And you and Kevin McCarthy and Frank Luntz and Trump and Bill Clinton and all of it. Yeah, the whole point is to throw all of them out. And I don't even care who replaces them.
No,
they say, what about the
No, see, I think that he was onto something with we need a new system. We need less government. We need more input from people. You could argue that people don't have the know-how to vote on these sorts of issues. They don't have the knowledge, because that's why I employ these politicians to that's their job, right, is to know about this sort of stuff. But you know, like, yeah, it's really not that hard. Climate change obviously is not as predicted. I just think that we have someone that will simplify the bill, or the law that's going to be passed, the statute, whatever you want to call it, the legislation. We have someone summarize it so that you can read it in like 2 or 3 paragraphs, which is pretty much all you need. Power bill, if we want green energy, yes, emissions are going to go down, power bills way up. Simple as that. If we want coal, emissions go up. Which one do we care about when India and China are spewing out this much? So I think that just replacing people might be okay for the start, but then they get, you know, then someone slides into their DMs and says, oh, can you influence this policy, or can you do this, and oh, maybe we'll be able to help you out here. And people get corrupted very easily. Like Tucker said it. How much would it cost to persuade or bribe, basically, Anthony Albanese? I don't know, what's he getting paid a year? 400 or 600 grand? You know, like some oil company or some mining company comes and there's stocks, or there's something later down the line, or there's this and there's that. It doesn't take much. It really doesn't take much. But anyway, let's get back onto the video. I think that a new system is needed, but obviously that's very, he's talking about revolutionary, so I think a new system where the people vote online is a much, well, it needs to be an idea that needs to be thought out more.
Progressive left, what about them? They say, what about the reactionary right? What about it? So anyway, that's his comments on it, but it goes on. Thankfully, Johnson was not successful. Johnson's pleas fell flat after Representative Thomas Massie, the lead Republican co-sponsor of the bill, warned the Senate, do not muck it up. The House passed the legislation days after a discharge petition circulated by Massie and Ro Khanna, the lead Democrat sponsor, garnered 218 signatures to force the bill to the floor. 4 Republicans signed the petition: Massie and Representatives Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, and Representative Lauren Boebert, to help turn the tide in favor of the legislation. So let's go over the timeline here just to give you a quick refresh. So Trump promises during the election total transparency. He says, we're going to release all the files, we'll be the most transparent administration in history. He gets into office, and that is not the case. Weeks go by, and there is no word on the Epstein files. Finally, in the spring, he invites these idiot conservative influencers to the White House, like Mike Cernovich, who is about as dumb as he looks, Jack Posobiec, corniest person in politics, Scott Presler in his cowboy boots, D.C. Drano, otherwise known as Rogan O'Handley, but don't be confused by his Irish name, he is, among others. And you remember they take the infamous photo op. They're posing outside the East Wing with their binders that say Epstein files. And people say, what the f is this? Mm-hmm. Put them online. Don't put the Epstein files on paper in a binder that you give to like these idiot conservative influencers. Put it online so that we can see it. So the conservative influencers come home, they upload the binder, and people say, okay, so we've seen all these files before. It's a fake out. So let's be very clear about what took place there. They tried to trick us. That's what that was. That was not an accident. That was not a mistake. They intentionally tried to deceive the public. And they insulted their base. The GOP and the Trump administration and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, they gave a giant middle finger to the base. The base said, we want the files. And they said, oh, well, here's some things that we already released in a gimmicky binder with your favorite influencers on Twitter. And they thought that, I don't know, no one was going to read them. They thought that people would see Epstein files on the binder and will go, oh, good enough for me. I guess they were released. That was a trick. They lied. They tried to deceive us so that they can move on and never bring it up again. But people were hip, and people said, no, these are not the files. So then Pam Bondi and Kash Patel come out and they say, well, we'll release some very soon. They're on my desk. We're going to release them soon. So then they postponed it. That was a lie. And they thought that maybe people would forget about it. So first they tried to trick us. Then they tried to get us to forget about it. They thought we would just maybe stop caring about it. Then Trump orders an investigation into the files.
And this is why it's so important to have independent people that are influenced by no one, that have a huge following, report on these things, because it pushes, it's a huge pushback. Like if Candace Owens or any of these people, Tucker Carlson, millions of people see what the interview or the monologue. Millions of people, if not hundreds of millions, and this thing, the word gets around. You can't hide away anymore. We're gonna be coming after you and holding you accountable for your poor leadership.
Later on in the spring, he orders the FBI to look for all the instances of his name in the files. And it turns out the FBI finds thousands of mentions of Trump in the files. Trump lies to the press and said, I didn't do that. I don't know if my name is in the files. I don't know what's happening. He lies. In July, famously, the DOJ pushes the memo that says that there are no files. So again, they lied, they tried to trick us, then they tried to postpone it. Then they lied and said the files don't exist. And people said, are you serious? Of course they exist. First of all, you promised to release them. Second of all, you pretended to release them. Third of all, you said they were on your desk. Now they don't exist. So that's a lie. And very quickly, the narrative surrounding the files collapsed. And you might remember it was in the middle of July that the narrative changed about a dozen times. And Trump comes out and says, well, maybe the files exist, but it's all child material. The only files are photos and videos of children being... Then he comes out and says, well, maybe the files are real, but they're all fake. It's a hoax. Maybe the files are real, but they're not really real. Then, and this was the worst, this was maybe the worst thing that was said all year, Trump comes out and says, if you think there are files and if you care about it, he says, you are a traitor. You're working with the Democrats, and I don't even want your vote because you're stupid. He said this to his voters. So think of it.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing we know about Trump, he's a liar. You don't get to the top of the business world without lying your way through it.
Trump promises to release the files, tries to trick us into thinking he did, then lied to us and said, we'll release them later, then lied again and said they don't actually exist, even though he knew they did. And when the base said that's not good enough, we want them, Trump says, well, I hate you. You're the problem, and I don't want your support anyway. Amazing politics. But it gets better. This is where we enter into the next phase of the Epstein file scandal. That was the initial effort to distract, to defer, to suppress. Phase 2 comes into play when Thomas Massie leads the charge. And right up towards the beginning of the summer recess, Thomas Massie, a Republican, and Ro Khanna, a Democrat, come together and they file a discharge petition. And what this says is that if a majority in Congress vote in this procedural motion, then they can force a bill to come to the floor for a vote. In other words, let's say the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, doesn't want to vote on whether to release the Epstein files. The discharge petition overpowers this. And how does it work? You get all the Democrats plus a few Republicans. The Democrats are in the minority by only a handful of votes. So if you get all the Democrats with a handful of Republicans, you can cobble together a majority. And if they use the discharge petition, they can bypass Mike Johnson, the Speaker, and they can force the whole body to vote on whether to release the Epstein files, which is what they do. So Massie files a discharge petition. And it looks like inevitably this bill is going to be brought to the floor for a vote. So what does Mike Johnson do? On the order of Donald Trump, Mike Johnson adjourns Congress early. In other words, Congress was going to go on vacation in August. Mike Johnson says, we will stop all the major business of this body 2 weeks early. For one reason, because Trump told him to, because if he didn't, they would take up the Epstein file bill. So think of it. They went through the motion of releasing the files, then they delayed it, then they tried to cover it up and lied about it, then they tried to bully everybody. Then they literally shut down Congress to stop the files from getting out.
So this is about halfway through the video. He's sort of going around in circles a little bit here. I think his main points have been made and my main points have been made. But anyway, like as you can see, there's no... Like he's a conservative himself. You know, like he might have voted for Trump. I know that he liked Trump from the beginning. I've heard him talk about it, so he probably voted for him. But he's happy to criticize him when criticism is needed. And I think that we should just be able to criticize anything, whatever it is. Just whatever topic, we should be able to have a conversation and talk about it. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a good one.